Okay, this is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Rustum.
I'm Rustum. I'm an alcoholic.
I'm Rustum.
And I want to thank Sean for asking me to show up and share my experience, strength, and hope. It's always an honor to speak at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as soon as I walked in here, I saw William, and William was really excited to see me, and I was excited to see him. And there's something that happens when I come into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I get really excited. And people say, God, Rustum, you're always in a good mood. Well, no, I'm not. Sometimes I'm homicidal or, something's going on that's not, we're all there. As a matter of fact, today at the market, I had to go to the market twice today. I don't want you to know why. I mean, obviously, it wasn't for booze or whippets, okay, but but I had to go to the market twice. And the second time I was in the market, I wasn't feeling a lot of serenity. And there was a guy in front of me, and he had like 17 items in the express lane, and then he had like coupons and change, and it's like he just didn't have anything to do. He just wanted to hang out in the line like he was dying for something to do. And I just, everything in me wanted to say, you son of a bitch, what's the matter with you? Come on, hurry up. You got 17 items. You're counting coupons, change, Jesus Christ. But, here's what's great about Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me contrary action. So when the idiot is in front of me in line, although he's an idiot, and although he has 17 items and not 12 items, and he's got coupons and change and this and the card and the number's not right and the club card, and who thinks of all this shit, right? Although that is his deal, I don't have to say anything, because at a certain point, one of the things that I learned the hard way, I didn't learn it the soft way, I learned it the hard way, was I would rather be happy than right. But when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I, like most alcoholics, had a lot of defiance. And if you wanted to make sure that I did do something, just make a real point of telling me not to do it or that I can't. Ha ha! And I'll show you. I was full of defiance. And I also, like most alcoholics, I treated my loneliness with isolation. So, I was kind of coming from the place of, well, screw you and who are you and get away from me, you bastard, and can I have a hug? But, I don't know if I can tell you that, or so what's great about alcoholics, and this is me, because it's only my experience, strength, and hope. It's my experience that I have. I've been sober. I'm in my 24th year of sobriety, so I've been sober a good stretch, over, a little over a couple of decades here. And my experience is that I have continued to hit a place that was so uncomfortable that I had to grow, and continue to hit that place and continue to hit that place. And adversity and pain and any kind of feeling which is anything other than, like when you go on a really long roller coaster and you get to the top of the highest peak of it at the beginning, it goes up, tick, 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 and then it gets up to that top and it goes straight down and you're like, whee, and it's fun. Well, I want that feeling while shooting a speedball, geezing a speedball, smoking coke, and having like a constant orgasm all the time. That's how I want to live. I just want to feel that all the time. I want to feel that just good feeling all the time. And if I can feel like that all the time, well then, I won't mind the guy in line who has 17 items. and these other minor infractions that idiots seem to constantly commit as I go about my day trying to just be a good guy. But the reality is that my alcoholism is an illness. It's an obsession of the mind, an allergy of the body, and a spiritual malady. And my alcoholism, I did not know was alcoholism. So before I got sober, what I knew was I didn't feel okay. That there was something wrong with me. That something was not okay with me. That I didn't fit in. That I wasn't comfortable. That I just was not right. I wasn't right. So when I guzzled, at the age of 6, I guzzled a half a pint of peach brandy and I smoked a joint and then I huffed a bunch of gas on my mini bike. And I ran into a tree and broke my arm. So that was my first high. Now, most kids who are 6, they may drink a little peach brandy, but they probably won't guzzle it. And they may smoke a little reefer, I mean, maybe if they're really gone. But where in the world I got the idea to unscrew the gas can on my mini bike and go, till my head went, wah, wah, wah. Where'd that come from? I never saw anyone do that. I was just drawn to that chemical. That chemical, it just drew me in. I wanted to just sniff it, and I sniffed it a couple times, and it made me kind of dizzy, and I thought perhaps with the brandy and the joint and the sniffing of it, it would all go together. So my first drunk, high, huff, for all the huffers in the room, okay, that is the story of my drinking and using. What I did was I chased that, and then the other times that I used heroin and it really worked. The few times in the beginning that I used heroin and it really worked. I chased that through the gates of insanity and banged on death's door with everything I had. And the reason I did that is because I was seeking some sort of a spiritual solution. I was seeking something that would fix my spiritual malady. And what I sought worked, and it worked really well. Drugs and alcohol worked really well. When I would wake up in the morning and that fear would come upon me, that fear where sometimes it was so intense that if the phone rang, I would just jump. That fear would come upon me in the morning when I would guzzle a couple of 16-ounce beers first thing, or when I would guzzle some Jack Daniels, or when I would geese some Coke, or when I would, eat a couple of Quaaludes or phenobarbital, or, I would geese a couple of Placidils. Okay? Now, if I have any doubt that I'm an alcoholic, I loved it. The chapter 5, I was like, it was so funny. I was like, I've been waiting all these years not to hear I'm an alcoholic. That was such a great rendition of chapter 5. A, that we are not alcoholics. I can just see a newcomer going to the back. See, I told you so. But if I have any doubt that I am an alcoholic, addict, one and the same for me. I know there are people that say they're different. I won't mention their name, but there are people that say there's a big difference. For me, I kind of put it all together because I say, well, if I just went and took a little Valium for my nerves, I don't know, I might need something else. And then I wouldn't be sober, and I've been sober a little bit, and I probably wouldn't feel good. So for me, it's everything. It's everything. It's all or it's nothing. And if I have any doubt about my the disease that I have of alcoholism, all I have to do is think about shooting a Placidil. Placidils, for those who don't know what placidils are like, they're kind of like Quaaludes, but they're like a much worse high. They're like a downer, but it's sort of a downer. It's kind of like if you took like 12 Excedrin PMs. It's just a really bad high, and this was before all the newfangled, psychotropic anti-psych kind of medications that they were giving people in the loony bins, which I experienced lots of. So these were, there was Thorazine, and then there was Placidil, but Placidil just knocked you out. And they were these big green pills, dark green, and there was liquid inside them. And I'll never forget, I thought, well, they're liquid. So, and they're in a pill, which means they're made in the factory. They were manufactured, so they're probably sterile. So I just squeezed one out into a spoon and banged one, and it knocked my ass out. So the reason I'm talking about this is he's talking about shooting Placidils. Good God, what's happened? What's happened to Alcoholics Anonymous? He's supposed to just be talking about drinking with men in church basements and red noses and trench coats. Good God. What's going on here? But the reason I'm talking about this is I need to remember that. And it's suggested that when we're asked to share, to qualify, to speak, it's suggested that we talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And so for me, it's really important to hear myself talk about what it was like, and it's really important for me to hear others talk about what it was like. Because I can't tell you that when I hear a speaker and they get up there and they say, well, we all drank, so I know what that's like. I'm like, well, wait a second. So, for 35 minutes, you're just going to talk about how spiritual you are? Come on, I want to know. Give me the downfall. Tell me I want to identify. Because when I was new, when someone would talk about, it's a spiritual malady, and I meditate for 6 hours a day, when people would talk about this stuff when I was new, I wouldn't relate to it. What I related to was when people would talk about the drinking and using and the feelings they had with the drinking and the using and why they were drinking and using and how they felt and what was going on out there with the drinking and using and what they were looking for in the drinking and using. So there was an identification I had that was like no other when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, what happened to me is I got to a point where no matter how many beers I drank or how many quarts of Jack Daniels I chugged, or however many Placidils I took, or no matter how much coke I smoked, or heroin I shot, no matter how much I did, it no longer worked. And that fear that I would have in the morning when I'd wake up, that I'd need to get high, because that was there, that feeling, that impending doom was always there when I'd wake up. That impending doom was there. So what happened to me is I was living in New York City. I was on my own. I'd gone back there to live on my own because I used to live there with my family. They moved out here. I'd gone back there to live on my own because I'd done a geographic when I was 15. I thought, it's being out here in LA is the problem. If I go to New York, I'll be okay. So I went to New York and things became very grim. So I'm in New York. I'm 17 years old, and I reached a place that no matter what I took, or no matter what I drank, or what I shot, or sniffed, or tucked, or huffed, that anything I did didn't work. It didn't quiet that impending doom and that feeling of incomprehensible demoralization that there's something wrong with me, that I'm not okay inside, that I don't feel good about who I am, and I'm not okay. So I thought, I'm going to have to end it. It's come to that. I'm going to have to end it. So I had a little cheapo 38 which had bullets, and of course I never shot it, but I think it worked. So it was a revolver. You know, automatics often jam, but this probably worked. I got it from some dope fiend. Anyways, I sat in the closet for about an hour with the gun in my mouth, trying to get the courage to pull the trigger. And I was unable to pull the trigger. So I thought, I've got to find another way to do this. And I thought, I can overdose. What can I overdose on? Oh, maybe I can let me get some pills and I could wash them down with a quart of vodka. Sounds logical. So I walked down to Union Square Park, shaming myself that I didn't have the courage to blow my brains out. And I bought 20 blue number 10 volumes, and I guzzled them down with a quart of vodka. Now it just so happens that if I would have purchased illicitly in the park in Union Square Park, if I would have gotten any other sort of downer, I'd be dead. But it just so happens that Valium in large doses, your body assimilates it. It's not the same as phenobarbital and other downers. So what happened is when I took these 20 Valiums and guzzled this quart of vodka, I walked around in a blackout for about 4 days. And I woke up about 4 days later, laying on Fifth Avenue. My clothes were all ripped. I had 2 black eyes like a raccoon. You know, I'm sure someone just went bang and, God, look, he's so drunk. Oh, let's get the other one. Bang. Who knows, right? I had dried puke and blood all over my body. My clothes were all ripped up. I opened my eyes on Fifth Avenue, and it was a blue sky, and I heard birds chirping, and I thought, God, I'm not dead. People were stepping over me going to New York. I mean, this is New York pre-Giuliani. Okay, so this was New York when it was, you know, really New York. It wasn't Disneyland. And I had in that moment, as I was laying there on the ground with the ripped clothes and the 2 black eyes and the blood and the puke all over me, I had what is known as a moment of clarity. I thought, maybe I can't control it. I tried to kill myself. It didn't work. But maybe I can't handle it. Just maybe. See, I never thought that before, because the great obsession of every alcoholic is to somehow, someday, control their drinking, and we follow that into the gates of insanity. And that's the great obsession, that somehow I'll get it under control. And it's, you know, it's pointed out in the big book. It talks about it, and that is the great obsession until we surrender. And what happened is I was laying there on Fifth Avenue with the people walking over me and the blue sky and the little birdies tweeting. What happened to me is I had a moment of clarity. I had in my own way, I had a surrender. Because I tried everything. I'd been in institutions. I'd been locked up. I'd done all this stuff. And I basically, it was almost as if I believed that there was a 4-foot brick wall, and I believed that as long as I kept running into that wall as hard as I could, that eventually I would knock the wall down. Well, it's not going to happen. No human, you know, maybe a rat could chew through it in, like, you know, a matter of years, but no human is going to knock down a 4-foot brick wall, you know, a 4-foot thick brick wall. It's not going to happen. And that was my defiance. And so it just so happened that my father had joined a really creepy cult. And he was gone. And the last time, and they were telling him weird stuff. Because he'd become like, you know, he'd become way beyond any sort of normal cult. He was just downright cold and almost like, overtaken by the aliens or something. And one of the last times I called him, because I used to call him, and he'd send me a little money. I'd tell him a real good tale, and he would buy it or he wouldn't, but he would send me money. He would always have a little compassion. So the last time I called him, I said, Dad, I'm in the Lower East Side, and I screwed up, and I owe a little bit of money. I owe these guys $87. They've got me tied up, and they're going to kill me if I don't pay them. They're holding the phone to my ear right now. Could you wire me $100 at Western Union? And his response was, no, I can't. I have to go. Bye. Click. I'm like, God, what if I was telling the truth? So he was gone. They'd taken him. The aliens had come down and taken him. And now, lo and behold, this cult was called Alcoholics Anonymous that he joined. So I was freaked out about that. Because he told me about it, and we had like one brief conversation about it, and I said, now let me get this straight. Not even a joint before you go see a movie or something? Like nothing? Like a beer? Because I didn't understand that you could do nothing. I thought that, I was still, although I'd had my surrender, I still was under the assumption that it could be controlled. So I had a resentment with my dad, but I knew he was in AA. I had one other person I could call. I called this person. It was the only person left I could call. And this guy, he sent me a little bit of money, and he sent me a ticket to come back out here to the West Coast. And I'll never forget how I left New York City. I took almost all the money I had with saving just enough for to take a cab to JFK Airport. But all the rest of the money I had, I went into a deli, and I bought probably a case of beer and every can of whipped cream they had. And I'll never forget leaving New York City. Now, this is pre-Giuliani. I mean, anything goes, I was in the back of this checker cab, and I was just guzzling these 16-ounce beers, and then sucking off the nitrous and just throwing them out the window, going, yeah, I'm getting out of New York. Ha ha. I'm out of this joint. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Nitrous is good. And the cabbie is dry. He's not going to say anything, He's got a fare to JFK. He just kept his mouth shut. So I get to the airport. I get to JFK, and it takes me 4 days to get on the plane because I still had some beers and. They didn't let, they saw me coming like, I'm for the flight to LA, and they were like, no. And finally they relented and they let me on. And I came out to LA and I landed at LAX and I called my dad and my sister answered. Now, every time someone in my family answered, it was always like, he's alive. It's not the morgue. Wow, it's him. I wonder how he's doing. Is he missing any limbs? Is he in jail? He probably needs money, right? Because you know those calls. We all did them. So I said to my sister, can you come get me? And she came and she got me, and she brought me back home. And when we were driving up, she said, Dad is becoming very spiritual. Now, I had come from such an darkened place. The place that I'd come from had no light, because so often the place where we're at is of our own perception, and then on top of it I had this disease that was beyond my control, which, the only guarantee is it progressively gets worse, never better. So the place I was coming from was so dark that when she said, Dad's getting all spiritual, it just rubbed me the wrong way. It was like taking a bite into a turd. It just made my whole body cringe that, Dad's getting spiritual. It was like, oh, God, yuck. What, like with like patchouli oil and goats and frisbees or something? Now, give me a break, spiritual. It just, come on, that's not real. Because if any of that kind of stuff was real, I wouldn't have gone through the terrible pain that I've gone through and that I'm in right now. Poor Rustum. Poor, suffering Rustum. So I was committed to my suffering. So we got home, and about an hour later, my dad came home, and his first reaction was to turn and run like literally like the monster was there. And then he stepped in, he shut the door, and he looked right at me. And I saw something in him that I'd never seen before. And what I saw in him was the psychic change that takes place once someone comes into Alcoholics Anonymous and surrenders and begins to work the steps. And that psychic change, it just froze me. It froze me, and it wasn't fear. It was something so unknown, but yet warm in him that I'd never seen this in him. And he came over to me and he gave me a hug and he said, "Rustum, it's really good to see you. I love you." And I thought, wow, I don't think I responded. I probably just grunted or something, but I wasn't into saying I love you to anybody those days. And a few days later, he said, "Look, here's the deal. If you want to drink, you can. I don't really care. But you can't drink around here. If you want to stay here for a little bit, you can't drink. If you want to go to a meeting, you're welcome to come to a meeting with me. If you don't want to come to a meeting, it doesn't matter." And I thought, it doesn't matter. And I was intrigued because he had this, he really had this just benevolence about him where there was, because it was always, "You're a problem. What's going on? What's your problem?" He didn't care. He just said, "If you want to stay, you can't drink. If you want to go to a meeting, I'll bring you. If you don't want to go to a meeting, great." So I wound up going to a meeting with him, and it was a little awkward because the main speaker at my first meeting was my old probation officer. So so my alcoholic conspiracy went into, okay, so he called him up, he arranged it, and probably these people, he got them all here, and they put, here I am, my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm just thinking it's all about me, the whole meeting. Like they put it all together for me. It's all been constructed for me, yeah. Self-obsession. So I wasn't into him. I just blocked him out. I thought, this guy's a tool. He's got nothing for me. He was an idiot then. He's an idiot now. And he seems a little bit nicer, but he's probably faking it. The hell with him. So I just blocked him out. But then the birthday people came on. And the birthday people had a sincerity and a humility that hit me here. It was the same thing that I saw in my father. And I decided I'd give this thing a shot. And what I decided was this, that before I quit, because I was real great at the 100-yard dash, but I couldn't even run a mile or a half a mile, metaphorically. I could never sort of last. As soon as it got difficult, I was like, well, I know I could if I wanted to, but I don't want to. But if I wanted to, I would have done it really good. So I made a decision when I first came in here, and the decision I made was this. Although I didn't completely believe that what is promised at the end of the 12 steps, that having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, although I didn't completely believe that, there were a bunch of other people that believed that and claimed that they'd had one. A few of them said they had one of the sudden white light extraordinary kind. But most said they had one of more of an educational variety. It came upon them as a result of working the 12 steps. And what happened is I worked the 12 steps and I had a spiritual awakening of the educational variety. And, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me something that I didn't think I would ever have. It's given me the ability to feel good about who I am almost all the time. I never had that. I never had that. And I just want to say that when I came in the early 80s, people reached out to me, and they, no matter what was going on, they reached out to me and they included me and they made me a part of, and they introduced me to people regardless of what was going on with me. And because people did that to me, I do that to others, and I'm very inclusive. And when I go to a meeting, I talk to a lot of people, and I just want to say that for me, probably some of the most profound spiritual moments that I've had in my sobriety, in all of my endeavors, of all my successes, and all the things that I've done, and all the things that I've accomplished, and all the dreams I've wanted to come true, I'd have to say that probably some of the deepest moments that I've had have been meeting a guy at a meeting and seeing in that guy's eyes the incomprehensible demoralization and the uselessness and self-pity that I had when I walked in here, and getting his number because I know the guy's not going to call me, and calling that guy up the next day and saying and telling him I'm coming to pick him up and bringing him to a meeting, and sitting up front and thanking the speaker, and going out afterwards, and going to the meeting after the meeting and bringing him to coffee, and sitting there with the guy at 10:30, 11 at night, sitting there with the guy in the car, sharing my experience, strength, and hope, sharing my story with the guy. It have been some of the deepest moments I've had, because when I came in here, that's what people did to me. They didn't say, "So, who are you? What are you about? What are you doing, huh?" They didn't. There was none of that. They didn't. Not you. I didn't. But there, people shared their experience, strength, and hope with me. I couldn't believe that, people would actually tell me stuff they'd done and how they got sober. And so, I just want to say that of myself, I'm nothing. And with you guys, the sky is the limit. And I believe that it's that way for all of us. And again, I want to thank Sean, and I want to thank all of you for my life.